Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the overall political situation as it stands. Of course, we're looking at court proceedings on the issue of elections, when they'll be held, who will be responsible for giving the date. All of those things are in court. We're also going to be talking about the whole, recourse to the judicial process in the absence of there being an accord between politicians, which has consistently failed over time. We've seen that. We'll be talking about that, and we'll also be talking about the Jalsa in Sargodha as far as PMLN is concerned, Maryam Nawaz's address, and of course, we heard the remarks that were given by Rana Sanaullah when he said, the Minister for Interior, that as far as the PMLN is concerned, they've already started their election campaign after Maryam Nawaz's return, and that there is no way that a party like PMLN would shy away from the elections. And of course, a lot we'll be talking about the ramifications of the Jalsa itself, the statements that came in, and overall what is to be expected in the next week or so. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Hafiz Ehsan Khokar, who is a legal expert. Thank you so much for joining us today. He's also a lawyer of the Supreme Court. We have with us Rana Maqbool Ahmed, who is Senator with PMLN. Thank you for joining us. Hafiz Sahab, like we were earlier talking about overall, as far as the courts are concerned, certainly, we've talked about this before also. There was an expectation, there was a hope that there would be some agreement, some accord between politicians, between political parties. That of course doesn't seem to be happening for a time now. This latest foray, I would say, this latest suo motu that has been taken by the Supreme Court on this very important issue, how do you look at it overall as a lawyer?
Thank you so much. Now the Pakistan is going into a very critical constitutional and economic situation. And in the last 1 year, we have seen so many constitutional happening in Pakistan, starting from the vote of no confidence moved against the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, and then the process was in a way first it was interfered by the Speaker by not giving a prescribed date on a given time.
Right.
And then later on when there was a day for the moving the motion in the National Assembly, and it was turned down by the Speaker on the statement of one minister who was standing over there on the ground of Article 5. And then the Supreme Court intervened through a suo motu number 1 of 2022, and they decided that all the actions taken by the Deputy Speaker and in pursuance thereof by the Prime Ministers to dissolve the National Assembly's advice to the President, and the President accepted, it was set aside by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. It was unprecedented in the history of Pakistan that just a vote of no confidence was moved. It was disturbed and it was killed through illegal means, and later on it was rectified by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Then the same was happening in Punjab. The concerned governor of that time refused to take the oath.
Hafiz Sahab, the background, of course, I mean, you're right.
So now the first thing is that now since last 1 year, all the political parties, they are not sit together, and now this is a situation they are only saying their statements on a TV or in the print or electronic media, but the actual sitting is the Parliament first, and the second is to negotiate to go, because now there would be another election irrespective of the KPK and Punjab Assembly. There would be an election of the National Assembly. In like situation, if we are going for this election, that would be again nobody will trust, and there would be again confusion.
Let me come back to you, but I want to, as far as the PMLN is concerned, let me come back to you. I want to ask your opinion on this also. Rana Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Rana
clear.
Sahab, primarily speaking, as I understand, the Jalsa in Sargodha that happened the day before yesterday, as far as the PMLN is concerned, you maintain that you're ready for elections. You also maintain that as far as Maryam Nawaz's return is concerned, after her return, your election campaign started. But at the same time, you also say that there should be the elections in the center and the provinces should happen together. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely right.
So what is, what is the primarily the issue as far as, the war institutions now and this, the narrative as far as the PMLN is concerned? Has it changed now? Do you still stand by your narrative, or do you think that there is now lately been a change as far as the PMLN particularly is concerned?
Thank you, Mahruch. My Islam to you and your friend Law Laureate, Mr. Hafiz. As far as the election campaign of PMLN is concerned, that's on. Mariam's repatriation to Pakistan was a breath of fresh air, and the workers, they feel recharged to go for venturing for elections by all means. But there is a reason behind it why PMLN or other parties or other allies, they think that it's not an appropriate time for elections. Reason being that you go for election of the provincial assemblies, and after 3 months you go for election of the National Assembly. So it will create a lot of bickering all over and a lot of dissensions. The real spirit is election. There has to be uniformity in the election and the date. So all the sensible people, what they understand that there should be general elections, both the National Assembly and the provincial assemblies together. Therefore, people are not convinced. Actually, it was a wrong shot fired by PTI as usual as they do. So therefore,
are you not happy? Are you not satisfied with? Do you not have confidence in the overall judicial process of Pakistan at this time, in institutions generally?
I must submit very respectfully. You might remember this total issue started when there was a verdict about Article 63A. Once the parliamentarians who didn't even vote, their seats were cancelled and they were disqualified for no reason, because they didn't commit any offense or any irregularity. So the imbalance started from there. I think it should have been properly thought over, and really, according to the spirit of the Constitution, there should have been line of action. Now, everybody, you might have heard Lord many jurists saying this. This was not on, it was not appropriate. If at all you want to take action, you should take action totally in concomitance with the Constitution. You can't reframe the Constitution. If at all you want an amendment in the Constitution, it has to go to the Parliament. So it's therefore this situation has arisen. Now, of today, if you permit me to say,
you're saying that the issue. Let me just seek a clarification. You're saying that the issue of elections being held within a 90-day period should go through the National Assembly. It should be a decision that the National Assembly should be making.
No. I'm saying that the reasonable and justifiable decision should be that all the elections of National Assembly and the provincial assemblies should commence together. So therefore, what's the fun in going for spending so much of money on elections once and on this provincial assemblies, then on the national assemblies? Once you are there, so the quantum of expense will be tremendously reduced as well. More so, it will entail uniformity in the system. So our system is already in fragmented situation. We want uniformity and strength in the system. So therefore, most of the people say, no, if you permit me to say about what's being now carried on as far as this suo motu by the Honorable Supreme Court, which is taken, you might have heard the jurists making their own viewpoint. Have you heard the rep of the allies presenting his viewpoint on behalf of the allies in the Honorable Supreme Court today, Mr. Farooq Naik? What did he say? So, first of all, whole of the country is amazed that why these two senior-most judges, honorable judges of the Supreme Court, have been overlooked to be participating in and sitting in the bench. What's the reason for that? And more so, they have already presented a complaint to the Honorable Supreme Court that two honorable judges, about whom there are massive reservations, they should be politely requested, and they should rather voluntarily recuse.
Okay, fair enough. Let me come back to you.
This process
Senator
has started with dissensions right in the beginning. It's therefore
Let me come back to you. Hafiz Sahab, you heard what...
Malad, there is two aspects of this case. One is the constitutional aspect, and the second is the political aspect. The constitutional aspect is that the Chief Minister has the power to dissolve the assembly under Article 112 at any time. Number two, it is clearly in the constitution, if he advised to the governor, and the governor is not accepting the advice, automatically in 48 hours, the assembly would be dissolved. The third would be that if the assembly is dissolved, then there is a process of the caretaker government, and the caretaker government will take oath before the governor.
But
and the last most important thing is that if the assembly is dissolved, the elections to be held within 90 days. So there is no confusion in the constitution. The only confusion in the constitution is we are taking a political side and coming on a point when to give the date. This is the issue.
But the issue is also, I mean, okay, those are the legal issues, and I understand that. But the point is that the law also has to be framed in the light of the circumstances and what's happening, you know, as far as the situation is concerned.
On one side, if the assembly is gone, the caretaker has come. So the next most appropriate thing would be for a governor to give a date to the Election Commission of Pakistan, because he is under legal and constitutional responsibility to advise to the Election Commission of Pakistan to make arrangements for a free, fair and transparent elections. And this has also been upheld by the Lahore High Court. It has clearly said that there is no concept to go beyond the 90 days. And under the Election Act 2017, there is a process. If the process triggers as per resolution of the assembly, it minimum required 56 or 57 days. Start from the taking of the paper, and then finally the election, and then finally the notification will be held for a successful or return candidacy. Now in that situation, the Supreme Court has taken the cognizance, and there are so many number of petitions already filed, two by the speakers of the respective assemblies, one by the Islamabad Bar Association, and finally it was referred by two judges to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And under Article 184(3), it is a sole prerogative of the Chief Justice of Pakistan to take initiative under Article 184(3) as a suo motu in general proceedings. And second, it is his prerogative to make a bench and to fix a case to whom in front of these the cases would be decided. But now it's simultaneously, because we are in a very polarized situation, no one talking with each other, the political parties are not sitting together, and we are making different statements with different backgrounds. So this is not appropriate for our judicial system, this is not appropriate for our political system, and this is not for our constitutional office. It is not good for the President office, not good for the Prime Minister office, not good for the current, the governors, and most
important. But any office,
Hafiz
Sahab, any office, whether it's you know, the Prime Minister or the President, any office should not be acting at the behest of one political party. You know, there is, of course, these are offices that are, you know, supposed to rise above any kind of political consideration. You know, they're supposed to be, you know, they're not supposed to be motivated by those.
You consistently, when looking at the stance of the political parties, if we go on in February or March, the opposition parties were saying there should be the election and election date should be given, but there was no response from at that time the political ruling party at that time. And ultimately they were saying bring the vote of no confidence. So openly the Treasury at that time was saying bring the vote of no confidence, and when the vote of confidence brought by the opposition parties, it was reversed otherwise. And in the present situation, that the first the parties ruling in Punjab and KPK, they were saying we are going to dissolve the assembly, and the sitting government, they were saying you should dissolve the assembly.
But you don't think it's a question, I want to go to Senator Saab, but then I want to come back and talk to you about this really important question. The court has also talked about. The fact that dissolution of assemblies at the hands of motivated by.
I want to add one point. One point. Then you get to the Rana Sahab, because he is also a parliamentarian and a seasoned police officer and have a good experience in governance, because he sees the ground reality in both in terms of the police and the administration. What would be the impact if there would be a inconsistency of the election for the 6, 7 years? What is the impact on our village side and what impact the town? But the most important thing, I would only add one point, is that let's all the political parties rephrase their strategy in the larger interest of the country on 3 points. One, how the election would take place in Pakistan, first. Second, how would the economy would go for the 15 years in the country? And the third would be what would be the governance and the justice system in Pakistan to make sure in Pakistan that there would be free investment in Pakistan, there would be decision of cases in a minimum time, and there would be a credibility of all state institutions.
Let me come back to you. Ji, Rana Sahab, even before when when the PTI was in power, when the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was leading, when he was the Prime Minister, issues like there was earlier talk about reforms, there was talk about judicial reform, there was talk about but no move was made towards making those kind of reforms, moving towards there. These questions that Hafiz Saab raises, of course, are extremely important. But in the presence of a jail bharo tehreek, which is right now in process, it seems like, the accord or the kind of agreement one would like for there to be a political process, that actually works, in tandem with our economic realities and, the realities that unfortunately exist at this time in Pakistan, seems a fallacy. Isn't that true? Ji, Rana Sahab, can you hear me? Hafiz Sahab, the same question to you. I know that we all want there to be accord, we all want there to be, but in the absence, those reforms that you talked about didn't happen when PTI was in power, because at that time also there was, there was no accord, so to speak. Even at that time, as far as the vote of no confidence is concerned, there's a lot of criticism on those members of the PTI who decided to vote another way. Even if they didn't vote, actually, they chose to go another way. But according to them, a lot of it was because they were not being heard, they were not being, that's what they maintain till today. As far as the attitude of the former Prime Minister to his own people is concerned, all of those things. And there's by and large a lot of criticism on the fact that there doesn't seem to be, there weren't enough overtures that were made to the opposition of that time. Today, the government of today is saying that they have made those kind of, they have tried to get this opposition to come and play ball with them, but that doesn't seem to be happening. The jail bharo tehreek is even now in progress. In that kind of a situation, there's no accord. There's not likely to be any accord.
MAHRUKH, politics is not a game for tit for tat. Politics is a game to negotiate and to hear the stance of other side in a responsible way and to make a conclusion in the larger interest first for the political parties and then beyond the people's expectations. So this is the first stance. Now what we keep saying and observing for the last 5-6 years, the first there was a stance from the present opposition side that there was not a proper election in 2014-13 and they talked about there was a rigged election and their true representation not reflected in the parliament. Then when 2018 election, there was another stance by the present government that it was not a selected, it was not an elected government, but it is a selected government. And now the opposition is saying that it is more than that, it is an imported government. So what we are saying in his, this is not a reasonable attitude by our leaders. they should make a country not a mockery.
So what will so what's to prevent the opposition of today? Rana Saab, again, I think I've asked this question before also, but what's to prevent the opposition of today from accepting whatever the results of these polls may be, if they're not as glorifying, again I have to say, as the former Prime Minister expects them to
because
be?
both are expecting the same.
Maharukh, you are absolutely justified. He wouldn't he is not expected to accept the results of election if his party doesn't win. There is enough of substantive proof on record that only victory will be the guarantee for the fair election, victory for PTI. He is not, because he is such an unyielding character. You might have seen right from day one. He is the apple of discord all over. As my friend Hafiz was saying, they are not reaching an agreement. How can they reach an agreement under these conditions when his language is so annoying, his diction is so offensive, his way of talking is so derogatory? So how can you sit on one table? He doesn't even allow his president to intervene properly. He admonishes his president once he says that there should be an understanding and amity and NSA in a way. There should
Rana
be a
Sahab,
situation
do you
of
expect there to
cordial
be,
relationship.
Rana Sahab, do you think there's going to be, you know, okay, that there doesn't seem to be, let's leave that aside, no accord, no possibility of it, because if that had been possible, certainly we wouldn't be in court, you know, we wouldn't be seeing things happen the way that they are happening at this time as far as the courts are concerned. There would have been agreement if there was. What do you think would have happened? Do you think it's about the Jail Bharo Tehreek particularly? How do you see this Jail Bharo Tehreek progressing, in your opinion? You know, on the one hand, we are seeing people in jail. On the other hand, they're also in High Court, wanting for them to be released. As I understand, how will it play out for the PTI?
Maharukh, I personally think they should have gone into examined the science of Jail Bharo Tehreek. He should have studied the role of Hasrat Mohani, Maulana Zafar Ali Khan, Shorish Kashmiri, Faiz Ahmad Faiz, and other freedom fighters, Sheikh Rafiq. So what is the science of Jail Bharo? Jail Bharo is not this that you reluctantly go and then you start crying. Yesterday you were confined and next day you filed a writ petition. And KPK, the people took to their heels. So a few people in Pindi, they have, so this will not carry any impact. By and by, after about 10-15 days, they'll be coming out and they'll join their own people, because this struggle is not going to yield fruit. It's an exercise in futility, and Khan Sahib is bringing a lot of tiredom, unnecessary tiredom to his workers. He perhaps does not understand the real, genuine political science. Time and again he has faltered. He left the assemblies. A parliamentarian, a Democrat, would be the last person to leave the assemblies. Then he came here for dissolution of the provincial assemblies. There are today 2 honorable judges also remarked. Well, let's examine whether these assemblies have been genuinely, on genuine reason, dissolved. A new issue will be taken up, I assure you. What is this? If a person out of a whim, chief minister, he dissolves the assemblies and sends everybody packing home. Don't they think what would have the ramification on the democratic setup of the country? Are they there in the name of democracy? They are there to create commotion and schmozzle in the country and disorder in the country. Whatever is to be initiated, that has to be backed with sagacity, with a little responsibility.
Right.
Hafizah, my friend, is right. The Honorable Chief Justice has full prerogative. I will have one sentence saying on this. Prerogative has to be backed with a level of prudence.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much.
Is to, yes, with a level of prudence. If
Right.
we
Thank
use
you
our
so much.
prerogative arbitrarily and it comes up with disastrous
Okay.
repercussions, so we should review our policy.
Right, Ranazab, please stay with us. Let me come back to you. Hafizab, I think that's a relevant question. You know, whether and the courts have now that this question has come in the field, certainly, you know, it needs an answer. Whether the dissolution of the assemblies themselves was lawful, is that the question?
No. When the Supreme Court was approached by first the Islamabad Bar High Court Bar Association, it was that the assembly was dissolved in 2 provinces, and the governor is not giving a date under the constitution, and he is responsible to give a date to the election commission for a free, fair and transparent election. Then there was a petition from the Speaker KPK and Speaker Punjab Assembly. They were saying that now there is a caretaker government, there is a constitutional period for holding election within 90 days. The election date is not being given by the governor to the Election Commission of Pakistan, because in every forum the Election Commission of Pakistan is saying they are responsible for holding the election on one condition, that the date is to be given by the governor. Then the matter was before the Lahore High Court, and again it was agitated, and finally it was decided that the date to be given by the governor. So in the matter before the Supreme Court first was that despite all these things, the date is not being given by the governor, and the 3 questions formulated by the Chief Justice of Pakistan while making a suo motu initiative, that there is no issue, because there are clear provisions that the elections are to be held within the 90 days, and the Election Commission is responsible for a free, fair and transparent election. But when to give the date? Who is to give the date? That is very much clear in the constitution. When to give the date? This is the precise issue before the Supreme Court of Pakistan. But while hearing yesterday on the issue, there was some observation by the sitting members of the bench, and they invited on the point that the court should also look into the matter, under what circumstances the provincial assemblies was dissolved, and if the assembly was not dissolved in a way that which the Rana Sahib is pointing out, so it needs to be reconsidered. So the Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, commenting on the point that all the points will be taken care of while deciding the matter, and today there was a hearing on that side. Certain observations was passed, certain points were raised by the political parties, and now the Supreme Court has fixed the date on the Monday. And I think the most probably thing would be that because there is a 90 days period prescribed in the constitution, so we will be having a week proceedings in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and hoping so that this constitutional issue must be resolved at the earliest to come out.
It's certainly a very important issue. It's a constitutional issue. It's an issue of national importance. There's no denying that. But don't you feel that there, you know, when the court is engaged in political questions, it's certainly, you know, there are other issues at this time that, you know, those will be ignored in this 1 week.
Generally that in all the
this is a 9-member bench?
It's a 9 members bench. Generally all the constitutional courts in the world, and especially in Pakistan, there are certain judgments on it that political questions should not be brought to the court, because when you bring a political question and then the political question is decided either by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, it suits one party and it doesn't suit the other party. And we have seen the recent experience in our country that the judgment passed by the Supreme Court of Pakistan in April 2022 that suited the PDM and that did not suit the PTI. And later on, and first judgment was in Punjab regarding the Chief Ministers by Hamza Shahbaz Sharif. It suited PMLN and doesn't suit the PTI. And now again in Supreme Court of Pakistan, that might be because the Supreme Court is the ultimate arbitrator under the Constitution of Pakistan. We should not politicize our institution, because the only institution in the country is that if we have a confrontation environment, then it is only the Supreme Court of Pakistan who has to decide. And more importantly, and now there is another observation by a bench today's hearing, that you should resolve your political issues and like the holding of election at the political parties. But now we have seen that there is a political disconnect, there is no communication, there is no negotiation is going on.
But is this not a question of interpreting the Constitution?
It is all about the ego issue. The Constitution is very much clear. In March, April 2022, the Constitution was very much clear, and the Supreme Court decided in accordance with law. And when there was the issue of the Punjab Assembly, it was Constitution was very much clear, and the Supreme Court decided in accordance with law. And I hope so that now there is a constitutional issue before the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and Supreme Court definitely will decide that when if the assembly is dissolved, then when the election took place, and who is responsible to give a date, it should be a time bounded or it should be at his discretion. One. The second would be because there is an observation by a 9 members bench, the members who are sitting there, they will also address the issues, because today has also been raised the issues that whether the dissolution of assemblies by the respective chief ministers was at their personal whims or was in accordance with the spirit of the Constitution. And definitely the Supreme Court of Pakistan will look into the matter and decide in accordance with law.
Ji, Rana Sahab, whatever the court holds, of course, as far as the election issue is concerned, what is your party and overall your preparedness as far as elections are concerned?
Ji. You have been talking about the constitutional position. Hafiz Saab is an illustrious lawyer. Under these circumstances, when the Honorable Supreme Court is apprised by the Election Commission or other stakeholders about the availability of tools for conducting the elections, finances, armed forces, even the courts have declined to give them the support. So overall situation, then excessive expenditure, all these issues are to be taken into account. May I read out to you the Article 254 of the Constitution. Failure to comply with the requirement as to time does not render an act invalid. When any act or thing is requiring by Constitution to be done within a particular period, and it is not done within that period, the doing of the act or thing shall not be invalid or otherwise ineffective by the reason only that it was not done within the period. So it is covered and supported by Article 254 of the Constitution. So all these issues will come up before the Honorable Supreme Court. They will adjudicate finally, but that will be the final verdict. But this is, we are just trying to take certain decision on our own. That it's a very complex issue. It has become a very complex issue. Let's wait
on a lighter side, that the local government system is an important pillar of the Constitution, and there is Article 140A of the Constitution. And if we look at this argument that about the election, so all the provincial governments, they keep saying and they keep making their submissions before the court that there is a law and order situation, there is a flood problem, and there is also the issue of the delimitations. And what happened that there is no election, general election in all the provinces regarding the local government election. So we should kindly distinguish the local government election with the national election or the provincial assemblies or the national assemblies, because there is no option in the Constitution. The option is very much clear. There is the 5 years term for the Prime Minister or the National Assembly of Pakistan.
But what about practicality? What happens if practically it's impossible to hold elections because of the reasons that Rana Sahab is talking about? I'm just saying, you know, this is this is just a you know, it's just a scenario that I'm giving you.
First is that there is no like such opinion making by a governor for that time. That
but has your armed forces declined to give you personnel?
This is basically the administrative issues to be handled by the Election Commission of Pakistan. And MAHRUKH, frankly, now I am a student of law and a citizen of Pakistan. We should not set a practice to adjourn our elections. If at this time one party is saying that is not the suitable situation and it is lingering on the process and the government, then the other side will make the precedent of these things, and it will be a disaster for our democracy and our political parties. The problem, bottom line, is that what happened in the country for the last 5 years, because there was a good response by the present government at that time to the previous government. It should have been responded in a positive way, sit together on a national issues, but it was not happening.
But how can you sit together when you have all these jail bharo tehreeks happening in the country?
It is only a political
statement.
It
is populist politics, which is what the PTI is doing.
No, it is just a political statement to engage their workers and to tell the people that they are working in a strategy that if their demands are not accepted, they will go for it. And for the time being, that if the election was announced, schedule was announced by the governor and acted upon the Chief Election Commission of Pakistan, might be there was no need for the jail bharo tariq, but it is not in
no,
the
but
interest.
Hafiz Sahab, what if there is another tariq, for example? Let's talk about it. You know, a hypothetical scenario, if the PTI doesn't do as well as it thinks it might, and if there is, you know, and that happens and the elections go forward, then they will invariably cast slurs on the caretaker government. And then after that, let me just explain. And then it will be the caretaker government which was wrong. It will be other institutions which took part in the elections, which were not acting as bona fide as they should have been. All of those things will come into play, and there will be another tariq. So how does that then? What happens to that?
My lord, MAHRUKH, I as a citizen of Pakistan, I have two worries. One worry is the present situation which is going on, and it is not being resolved by the political parties. And the second situation would be that if there would be election on the demand of one political party and there is a decision of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, who will accept the results of the election first? And then after 2-3 months, there would be another election in 2 provinces and one for the National Assembly of Pakistan. And if, God forbids, that the losing party will not accept it, does this country bear the political or the economic turbulence in the country? This is a big question mark.
That's what I'm saying.
And this has to be decided by the leaders of our country. They are actually responsible. They should aside their differences, they should sit together, come on a point and decide a broad agenda for the country, which I earlier pointed out. First, now one party is saying that they don't have the trust over the Election Commission of Pakistan. If they are going with the non-trust with the Election Commission of Pakistan and they lose the election, what is the consequence? And if they succeed, what would be the reaction of the other side? Because in our subcontinent, there is always a very rivalry and hostility politics in subcontinents, because we have less tolerance to have a defeat or to say congratulations to the other party.
Because now we don't have that tolerance at all anyway in our political landscape at this time.
So this is reflecting in our society, because it has divided in our country in a way that wherever we go, there is a clear division on it. And despite all these things, that the situation of our economy is concerned, the situation of law and order is concerned, the situation that we have a population of more than 60%, the youth population, what are they taking from these the political and constitutional crisis in Pakistan? So this is a time to sit together. Again, in the larger interest of the country, and the most important thing would be that all those who are matter in the system, they play their role for a better and prosperous Pakistan.
Ji, Rana Sahab, your comments. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time.
In principle, Hafiz Sahab is absolutely correct, but it is not practicable. You are prisoner of, we are prisoner of insanity all over. The person with whom we are dealing, he is not, unfortunately, very tragically, he is not a balanced person. He is terribly emotional, he is awfully subjective, and he is so arbitrary, and he is so, sorry to say, obnoxious in his language, that doesn't behave of a statesman or a politician. I'll request Hafiz Saab, he is Hafiz as well, then he should pray to Allah that he reforms himself, reforms the behavior, comes on the conference table, on the parley table,
Sir, we are
discusses
doing
the issue, and
we are doing
okay, you must do. Let's only the prayer is left.
I think everyone is praying for Pakistan at this
to
time.
be reformed at all. Yes, we are praying for Pakistan. If this person, the one person is creating so much of commotion all over, every time he comes with an excuse which adds to the turbulence and to uncertainty in the country. So that is not a proper role of a politician. So therefore, he has changed the culture. He has changed the culture of the youth as well. The language which youth and supporters are using, my God, we have never heard of this language in the past. So therefore, let's prepare ourselves.
Unfortunately, I'm running out of time.
Self-accountability, and is absolutely correct. So,
with due respect, having a great potential both in resources and both in terms of the human, we are begging in the world, and IMF is dictating us. We should revisit our policy and we should redirection our country.
Across the board, of course, all political parties have to play their role there.
They are constitutionally and ethically under obligations.
Right. That's all the time that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us, Hafiz Ehsan Khokhar Saab. Thank you for being with us. Rana Maqbool Ahmed, thank you for joining us today. Overall, of course, as far as it seems like it's the time for jail bharo tehreek and not the time for any kind of a political accord. It seems that it's not a time to talk about economy. It's not a time to talk about the overall situation, security situation in the country as far as the opposition is concerned. It's not a time to reflect upon the challenges Pakistan faces as far as floods are concerned, as far as economy overall is concerned. Those things don't seem to be of particular concern to the opposition of today. Of course, the questions that have been raised as far as are for the courts to answer, and we will know in the next week or so what happens on this very important issue. But regardless of what the court holds, it is a time for reflection for politicians of this country when they are unable to reach any kind of accord on these important issues, and unfortunately the recourse is to go to courts. Thank you so much for joining us.